Geraldine DeRuyter is the creator of the popular blog The Everywhereist and author of the book All Over the Place: Adventures in Travel, True Love, and Petty Theft. Earlier this year, she wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post titled, "I thought my bully deserved an awful life, but then he had one." The article garnered a lot of attention for its candid account of her experience and what happened to the boy who bullied her as a child. DeRuyter is originally from Florida and was raised by her mom in a small, not-so-wealthy town near the water.
I had kind of this childhood antagonizer, and I look back now and realize that obviously this was a troubled child, but I think when you're a kid, you can't kind of see outside of your own experiences very well, and you can't see outside of your own pain. And so it was compounded by kind of my own experiences of, at the time my mother was in a very abusive relationship, and I was dealing with that on a very, that was my home life, and I was dealing with that on a very personal level. And then at school, I was getting antagonized by this little boy.
DeRuyter remembers that it was really a difficult time in her life. She felt alone and shameful, thinking what was wrong with her that she was the target of this ruthless bully.
Ultimately was something that I really internalized, that these were things that, I either blamed myself for or that I felt a lot of shame for, and it took me a long time to realize that that wasn't the case. But I think the narrative that we tell a lot of kids who are dealing with antagonism, who are dealing with abuse from their peers, and I think this narrative has started to change, but at least for my generation, was always, don't worry, things are going to get better. And the person who's antagonizing you or bullying you is not going to have a good life. Like, they're going to get theirs, and life is going to pay them back.
While bullying is a much larger discussion today, the child doing the bullying is still vilified and put down. As a child, DeRuyter says that this mindset gave her comfort that karma would ultimately get her bully back. But today, she says she has a different view.
I look back and I realize how ridiculous and sad that narrative is, because what we're ultimately doing is we're subjecting bullying victims to kind of just be resigned to their fates. And also, we're not addressing the underlying cause of bullying, which is these kids who are lashing out and victimizing others are not in a good place, and they're not bad kids. They're ultimately children who are either mimicking violence that they see in their home environment, or they are responding to emotional or physical abuse that they don't have the words to really verbalize. And so that's the way in which they're acting out.
While DeRuyter grew up and left the small town in Florida, her bully stayed stagnant, living in the same area not far from his childhood house.
I went to look up the now man, then child, who had bullied me, and I couldn't find any record of him anywhere. And I thought that was kind of strange. He wasn't on social media. He didn't have a Facebook page. And I later was hanging out with a friend of mine who had gone to middle school with me, and she told me that he had died. And she had told me that he had died 5 years earlier. And because of how the timing had panned out, he had died kind of right at the precipice of the social media explosion. And so there was really no record of him passing away. So there was no way for me to really find out. And after I found out that he had passed away, I started doing research and kind of became a little bit, for a few days, just monomaniacal about it.
DeRuyter's childhood bully had been dealing marijuana and was killed in his home during a robbery gone wrong. One of the people involved in his death had been his childhood friend.
I always thought that the system had failed me because I was bullied and I had all this trauma and no one ever did anything. And her response was, she goes, ultimately, you're fine. You're alive. You have a wonderful home life and you have a fulfilling career. And she said, credit where credit is due. You do get credit for parts of that. She goes, but the system really failed him because he's not here. This is a young man who died. This was people who were overlooking him because he was a bothersome, troubled kid, and he was labeled as a problem in the 4th or 5th grade and didn't get the help that he needed.
Dr. Ross Green is a clinical child psychologist and the founding director of the nonprofit Lives in the Balance. He says this narrative is pervasive, and child bullies, rather than receiving help, are often deemed as problematic by society.
If this kid has lagging skills and unsolved problems, those punitive interventions aren't going to touch those lagging skills and unsolved problems, because detentions don't solve any problems or teach any skills. Suspensions don't. Expulsions don't. Paddling doesn't. Restraining a kid doesn't. Secluding a kid doesn't. These are all things that behaviorally challenging students are on the receiving end of by very well-intentioned caregivers, and it's making them worse.
Child bullies bully for a reason, and it can be a myriad of motives causing a child to act out and prey on other children.
Bullies have often been bullied. We know that about bullies. Bullies are lacking some very important skills. I could name a few. Sometimes difficulty appreciating how their behavior is affecting other people, difficulty taking another person's perspective, difficulty being empathic and putting oneself in another person's shoes, various social skills.
Green says these missing skills and issues need to be addressed with the child compassionately, rather than through punitive punishment that shoves them farther away.
The kids who need our help the most are often getting help that isn't helpful. Unfortunately, in a lot of schools, because a lot of schools have been mandated to have anti-bullying programs, a lot of anti-bullying programs are mostly about bullying the bullies. These kids become very frustrated. Sometimes their behavior worsens. They lose hope. They lose faith. And they start affiliating with other kids who've come down the exact same path. What bullies need from us is the exact same thing that the bullied needs from us, the exact same thing that any kid with social, emotional, and behavioral challenges needs from us. They need us to view their difficulties through accurate lenses. They need us to help them solve the problems that are affecting their lives.
Looking back on her childhood and where she is today, Geraldine wonders where her bully would be today if he did get the help he needed as a child.
I would hope he would still be alive. I think he was a kid with a lot of anger in him. And a friend of mine told me afterwards, she said whenever her mother saw this young man, she hugged him for a long time. She would just go up to him and give him extra hugs. And she told me, she said it was because her mom realized that he needed that. And that realization broke my heart, because there were people who cared about him. There were people who really loved him and who saw that there was something that was really troubling him.
To check out Geraldine de Ruyter's article in the Washington Post and find out more about both of our guests, visit viewpointsradio.org. This segment is written and produced by Amira Zaveri. Studio production by Jason Dickey. I'm Marty Peterson.
Viewpoints returns in just a moment.
Holiday celebrations are often joyous occasions, but they can be challenging for the millions of people living with Alzheimer's disease and those who care for them. The hustle and bustle of the holidays can be stressful for those with Alzheimer's, and changes in the daily routine, large gatherings, and noisy environments can create extra anxiety. Monica Marino, Senior Director of Care and Support at the Alzheimer's Association, has some tips to make the holidays enjoyable.
First, plan ahead. Prepare the host for special needs, such as a quiet room for the person to rest. If you're hosting, let guests know what to expect before they arrive. Since crosstalk and multiple conversations can be challenging for people living with Alzheimer's, try engaging the person one-on-one or in smaller groups, and keep them involved in the celebrations.
Marino also suggests experimenting with new traditions. For example, if evening confusion and agitation are a problem, turn your holiday dinner into a holiday lunch or brunch. Find out more tips at alz.org.
Your holiday grocery basket is waiting to be filled, and Aldi is a simpler, faster, and more cost-effective place to shop for groceries this holiday season. According to a new study by Kantar, more than 3/4 of household primary grocery shoppers agree Aldi is simpler to shop compared to other grocery stores. A time test with more than 700 shoppers confirms it. Aldi is at least 20% faster to shop. What's more, 9 out of 10 respondents who shopped at Aldi agree Aldi is more cost-effective than other grocery stores. It's all because every inch of an Aldi store is intentionally designed to provide a more streamlined experience, offering shoppers exactly what they need. And especially during the holidays, that's where fun comes in. Every week, Aldi puts out nearly 100 unique Aldi finds, ranging from luxury jarred candles and cast iron cookware to a range of advent calendars and holiday pet sweaters. During the holidays, shoppers are pressed for time and money, and Aldi has pioneered a model that gives people more of both.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of MediaTrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows. And find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints. Coming up next week.
Climate Refugee 101, but we haven't decided if or when we might go or where. The whole world is facing some serious challenges right now.
Adapting and finding hope in a shifting global landscape. Then,
having the stock in the freezer, I think of it as like money in the bank. It's like, you know, you're going to have something good and you can add anything to it.
A cookbook author who has pared down the stress of preparing food for large and small groups. I'm Marty Peterson.
and I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.